The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to episode 264 of the Broadcasters Podcast. We're going to talk about DCEU. We're going to run right into it. Probably about a 30-minute show, but there's a few things to bring up on the program. The new DC Slate has been unveiled. Well, they're going to figure out what all the new 10 projects are going to put out right now. James Gunn went out, saw it on a TikTok feed, and went through and made a lot of explanations. And one of the things we're going to know is that the slate of movies that are coming out now for 2023 are going to stay in place, and they're going to lead into the new saga, which will be the next phase of the DC studio universe. They're going to go into all that. And also, NFL Sunday Ticket's going to go through some things when they go to YouTube this fall. We're going to learn some things about that. AM stations fading due to sadness and static. So Wall Street Journal put out a pretty big story about that. And then the 10 legal challenges for companies in 2023. We'll have that for you as well. Well, from the legal standpoint, here on the program, let's go right into it. Hollywood Reporter brings out right away that there's a new Batman movie without Robert Pattinson, but featuring Bruce Wayne's murderous son. A Superman movie on the release schedule, which will be for July 11th, 2025. And a Game of Thrones style drama set on Wonder Woman's home island of Themyscira, or the Amazonian Palace intrigue they were talking about. An animated series also in production called Creature Commandos. That's what's being put out together by DC studio bosses James Gunn and Peter Safran. So they're going to put this together. It's something to be said about where the Marvel studios have gone in their own direction with the movies. They're never going to get to the level of what they did with Avengers. And if they're going to start rebuilding some of the stars they had before, whether it was Spider-Man or they could go Iron Man again, go back to Fantastic Four again, whatever they're going to do. Right now, we're just getting alternate characters, the Black Panthers, Shang-Chi's, those kind of, or Doctor Strange's. We're getting those. And then we'll get other things coming up later this year. But like really, the level of the movies that Marvel gave out to us in the 2010s, it's not, you're going to have to wait and see what they come up with, where some of the stars they had before to lead these, they're not as much. Like, I'm sure people are going to be waiting for Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, another Ant-Man, and then who knows, another Deadpool. Who knows what we're going to have after that, right? It's going to be more of the 10 poles that are coming up. We know for DC that they'll have The Flash coming up, Blue Beetle, Shazam, and Aquaman, all slated for this year. And Shazam, I think, is the first one in March. That comes up right away. Other than that, this is good for the movie theaters. It's good for DC in the terms of, for Warner Brothers Discovery, they need a win here. They need to do something to kind of recreate things, because all the bad press of the merger really hurt things. And then the complete change of like, well, we're just going to go and just rehash some things. We're going to get rid of Batgirl. We're not going to run that. We're not bringing back Pattinson. We're not bringing back Henry Cavill. They're just changing things up, and they're going to move along. I'm like, okay. So some people are going to say, well, what are you going to do to make that work? What are you going to do? And that's what people want to really understand. Because right now, the movie theaters could use some movies to really pick things up. Avatar is still rolling along right now, 7 weeks in the box office, and they're kicking ass. They did break the $2 billion mark, so they're going to make their money somehow. $2.1 million, they're basically breaking even, but they did it. They were able to accomplish that. Most of that was international viewers, by the way, just to make that point. Other than that, there are not a lot of movies making a whole lot of money right now. Not much at all. And so we have to wait and see what they're going to have down the line for the release schedule, which will help out. If you look at what they're going to have for Marvel movies, there's not much. Because right now, you look at the February, nothing. Except for Ant-Man and the Wasp. And then you move along, like there's not a lot of superhero movies or anything like that. Or the 10 poles they talk about. Creed 3 is March 3rd. Scream 6 is March 10th. Shazam, March 17th. John Wick, Chapter 4, the 24th of March. March 31st for Dungeons & Dragons. Super Mario Brothers on April 7th. And they're going to move into May for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. They're going to move into Fast X on May 19th. These are all the big tent poles, the ones that should be making, $100 million this year in the box office for the most part. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, June 2nd. Transformers, June 9th. Flash, June 16th. Indiana Jones, June 30th. Mission Impossible, July 14th. The Marvels is July 28th. We move down, and the Blue Beetles, August 18th. And then we continue, and that's it. September? No. Equalizer 2? There you go. Dune Part 2, November 3rd. And Aquaman and the Last Kingdom, December 25th. So we don't have that many of the Marvel movies, and we're having to wait what Marvel's going to be put down on the slate of movies coming up. And so Marvel's not necessarily going super all out right now with a whole lot of projects that are, they have a lot of projects over on Disney Plus and things like that. But in terms of the movies, it's not like they're, stacking up a lot. Right there, what I just said, alone, you got the Marvels and Ant-Man and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. That's it. That's your three right now so far. And meantime, DC has 4. And they're going to ramp up. And they're going to be more concerned with the movie theaters. They want to get the movie experience out there, as opposed to Marvel that's going to be putting a lot of things still over on the small screen, if that's what they want to do. So it's been 3 months since the whole takeover, and now the film and TV properties are combined, live action and animation as well as gaming, and they're going to revamp the way the movies and TV sites do business. They're cutting ties with projects and creators, and a writer's room has been formed to find an overall story that will launch a unified DC universe. And one of the plans they already have is Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, and a slate of projects have been put into development. I'll take your away from Hollywood Reporter on this story. So the plans were made Monday at the Warner Brothers lot in Burbank. James Gunn explains that one of our strategies is to take our diamond characters, which is Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and we use them to prop up other characters that people don't know. And Safran says to build those lesser-known properties into the diamond properties of tomorrow, which is much as what Marvel did before, as well anyways. But they've had things that just kind of been off in other directions. Meanwhile, they've had some things that have stuck and some that have not. There's Creature Commandos, which will be James Gunn is producing and wrote. Classic monsters fighting Nazis. Waller's another one. That's a spinoff of Gunn's own HBO Max hit series Peacemaker. And as Viola Davis returning with the character as the head of a government task force. And then Superman Legacy. And that'll be the Man of Steel that Gunn is writing and made direct. And they're saying that Superman in 2025 will be the kickoff of the duo's DCU plans. It's not an origin story. It focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He's the embodiment of the truth, justice, the American way. Kindness in a world that thinks kindness is old-fashioned. Then lanterns. Multiple Green Lanterns. Now that's been scrapped, they said. And so they're going to have another one that's be space cops with power rings, much like True Detective, terrestrial-based. And then moving along, you'll have the Authority, and that's based on a team of superheroes with rather extreme methods of protecting the planet. James Gunn really pushed this movie. It's going to be that's going to be a really big thing, right? And they make the point on saying that one of the things of the DCU is that it's not just a story of heroes and villains. Not every film and TV show is going to be about good guy versus bad guy. Giant things from the sky come and good guy wins. There are white hats, black hats, and gray hats. They'll have Paradise Lost, which is a Game of Thrones type of deal. That's the one that's based on Diana Prince's original home of Wonder Woman. They'll have that. It'll have political intrigue, The Brave and the Bold, the DCU Batman, and it'll show the Robin, which is Damian Wayne, who's a little son of a bitch, they say. It'll be inspired by the now classic Batman run written by Grant Morrison, introducing Batman to a son he never knew existed, a murderous tween raised by assassins. And Batman will no longer be played by Robert Pattinson, which is unfortunate. They're not going to do it. No. They're going to do one more Batman, and Matt Reeves will direct it. And it'll be October 30th, October 3rd, 2025, the Batman Part 2. And that's when they think everything's going to really build up in 2 years. They'll have an HBO Max series called Booster Gold, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, Swamp Thing they're going to bring back, which we haven't seen anything since the 80s. So we have the 4 movies coming out now, and then they got to wait and see where everything comes up for 2025. And they'll have other things in the works. It's a long ramp up, by the way. But they still stand behind the fact they're going to have The Flash now, probably one of the best, greatest superhero movies ever made. The biggest thing they had was just Ezra Miller and all the mess around that. But it sounds like everything's going to slow down. And by June 16th, things will be good to go ahead and promote the movie, and the movie should do well. So that second half of the year is going to be pretty massive for DCEU. Good for them. They got a plan in place. And when it comes to Ezra Miller, they're talking about the fact that he's on a path to betterment. The folks actually said that Ezra's completely committed to the recovery. We're fully supportive. The time is right. They're ready to have the discussion. We'll figure out what's the best path forward. But they're focused on his recovery, and they feel like he's making enormous progress. They were also asked about the approach to casting, if there's any returning of new actors, and the approach to casting. They don't want any series to feel in any way like Stepchildren or Lesser Than. It's just another way to tell a story. So they'll have, certain characters that will cross over into other films. They also talk about Henry Cavill, tipped to return to Superman in a cameo in last year's Black Adam, but now will not return. And then James Gunn made a point and says that we didn't fire Henry. Henry was never cast. For me, it's about who do I want to cast as Superman, and who do the filmmakers we have want to cast. And for me, for this story, it isn't Henry. He says, I like Henry. He's a great guy. I think he's getting dicked around by a lot of people, including the former regime at his company, but the Superman is not Henry for a number of reasons. And then they also tried to walk the line about how to deal with actors just up in the controversy. Zachary Levi of Shazam being the most recent example. He tweeted words against, Pfizer and COVID-19 vaccine. Oh, boy. And James Gunn talks about that and says, actors, filmmakers that I work with are going to say things I agree with and that I don't agree with. I can't be changing my plans all the time because an actor says something I don't agree with. But the same token, if someone is doing something that's morally irreprehensible, that's a different story. We have to take that into account. A pretty interesting stance to stand behind Zachary Levi, especially with this movie coming out. I mean, do we see Zachary Levi reprising Shazam in a future movie? Maybe not. I don't know. They also stress the importance of strong screenplays that will be preventing the dreaded feeling of superhero fatigue, and that projects will have a tonal and thematic difference from each other. And Gunn calls out the degradation of screenwriters in Hollywood, and also says the duo wants to be respectful of the voice of filmmakers they are working with up to a point. They talk about David Zaslav, who's now the guy that set up heading Warner Bros. Discovery, and he says that he had a vision in mind, a standalone studio that would be everything DC centralized. The people was for us coming in, having access to any character, any story, tell the stories we wanted to tell across all the media. Yeah, leave him alone. Leave him alone, David. He says that the history of DC is pretty messed up. So they're admitting the fact that DC and how it's been set up by Warner Brothers, bad. Last dozen years, not good. You had Zack Snyder's multi-movie universe that sputtered halfway through, attempted course correction by Joss Whedon that made things worse, several changes in leadership, the Arrowverse that also went away, that was on CW for a decade. And Gunn says no one was binding the mint. They were giving away IP like it were party favors for any creator who smiled at them. At the end, they both, Gunn and Safran, said they don't not only what's at stake, but the enormous opportunity being presented to them, and it's a chance to impact and change the culture via the company culture of how it approaches storytelling to the broader popular culture. I mean, these are the movies that go to the theaters. They have a particular direction they want to go. That's the idea. So we can wait on that, see what they're going to do. And then the story comes out about how the Flash is supposed to reset the DC universe and the explanation behind that. Screen Rant makes the point of that. And that James Gunn says the Flash is set to reset everything. It's going to be amazing how this comes out. Because remember, The Flash went through everything, right? In development since the beginning of the DCEU and a shared universe with Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. Director changes, reschedules. Now we're going to get in the final year of the original DCEU. We're finally getting to where it needs to be. Flash is confirmed to both deal with time travel and the multiverse. The DC Fandom 2021, the Flash trailer showed Flash in front of his house on what appeared to be the night Nora Allen died, and Michael Keaton returning at the same time as the same Batman he played in Batman in 89 and 92. And in the Flash teaser, the first one, Keaton's Batman says that Barry can go to any universe, yet fighting is to save this one. And then the multiverse will play a huge role in the film. The Flash may sound like a Flashpoint adaptation at first, but it's adding a multiverse element to it. My thing is, I'm wondering what is going to go on, because it's the continuation, the momentum for all these superhero movies to continue and all these other properties to continue is tough. For the schedule we don't have a lot of superhero movies on the Marvel side necessarily. We got 3, 4 we have on DCEU, which is good. So quarterlies, right? But then a lot of other properties coming back in. You see Fast and Furious and Transformers coming back, and all trying to bring themselves together. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming back. There's a lot. Expendables coming back. There's a lot of the properties coming back now. So the room to have those big, long releases of movies is also, I think, it's kind of tough. Which is also why it's unfortunate that DC last year, why they should not have moved all the movies they did around. To move Aquaman past, into the next year. To move Shazam into the next year. It's unfortunate. All this going on, they should have just let everything finish as it did. Let Batgirl come out. Let all these other movies come out. Wrap them up and go. But when they did this drastic move, it really got people in the wrong place. It really did. And that's unfortunate. That's what I have when it comes to the main event headline. We're going to go now into Sunday Ticket. A few more stories just to wrap things up. Sunday Ticket is going to have new features when it moves to YouTube this fall. Let's talk about it. Deadline reports it. And every YouTube viewer who's interested in the NFL can now have one-click access to the full offering of Sunday Ticket. It'll be available a la carte for fans. It'll have picture-in-picture functionality. Viewers can surf around games of their choice. The only thing is that YouTube TV, they have not disclosed pricing or the details. They plan to offer it as both an add-on for the 5 million subscribers that pay bundle the YouTube TV, or a separate option with the company's channel store. And on the football talk, was timely given to give the build-up to the Super Bowl coming up February 12th. A welcome distraction for all the issues with the stock numbers that are not doing well, and the earnings that went down 8% year-to-year in ad drop. There were a lot of issues with AT&T, with AT&T DirecTV when they had issues with trying to continue to run Sunday Ticket. A lot of things were going wrong. Tech outages, a lot of issues going on with that. So the idea will be that subscribers, for example, watch multiple screens at once on YouTube, and we'll be adding new specific features, comments, chats, polls, and so on. And on the creator side, imagine all the creative ways we can create exclusive NFL content beyond the scenes, access, and so on. We're excited to see what we can do, long form, short form, live streams, and more. And that's the second deal now where YouTube comes in after Amazon puts in Thursday Night Football. Now we have the NFL streaming here, all their games on Sunday Ticket now online. We have to also see how it's going to turn out for the sports bars, which is where I always watch the games at. A story from Wall Street Journal about AM radio. This was something that got my eye, and me being the radiophile that I am, I had to go and bring this up. Because it is true, AM is going by the wayside, and there's not a lot of technology when it comes to automobiles where they're still trying to support AM radio. They're not. They're going to let it go. So I must admit, I'm really surprised that Wall Street Journal of all people would actually write this story, but let's get into what they got here. The story is written by Peter Funt. He goes into a whole lot of backstory of the history of radio that you can listen to as a clear channel, which means that the radio waves would go across multiple states. And in some cases, some stations you could hear in like about 2/3 of the country at night when all the other stations are shut off. And it was the appeal of being able to listen to stations where they were and just really find them. And that's what they talked about. So, for instance, WABC, a very popular top 40 radio station in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and you could hear their signal go out as much as 1,600 miles. So, amplitude modulation. AM radio waves are subject to static and interference, but are longer and can travel much farther than FM for frequency modulation. Cars have helped AM radio survive. Drive time, the hours in the morning and evening when people commute, is when AM stations carrying primarily news and talk. Primarily news and talk makes most of their money, but it's sad that most of these car makers are going to start giving up on AM. Several European car makers, Audi, BMW, Porsche, Volkswagen, Volvo, have stopped putting AM radios in certain models. Well, it's also because in Europe, they're not using AM either. They're using, FM, or they're using DAB, their own digital service. But digital is much more important in the European stations or European countries than it is over here. Because HD never really click off over here. It's here, but nobody's picking it up. American automakers are taking a more cautious approach. Tesla's already eliminated AM radios. Ford plans to drop them for their electric pickup trucks. But yet 47 million Americans will still listen to programming on the AM dial. But also, some of these shows that we have that are out there on the conservative side, there's still some that went by the wayside. When Rush Limbaugh passed away, was a big void that was left. And a lot of conservative talkers coming in to try to fill that spot. So you have some stations that might be all news, and then others that are just all talk. AM remains the medium of choice for certain types of broadcasts, notably conservative talk. Tucker's Magazine, most popular political voices they see are Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, and Brian Kilmeade. And Mr. Fun says that in his career, I was a regular on a similar program on WMCE in New York, hosted by a character that called himself Long John Nebel. He favored conspiracy theories and chatter about space aliens, mostly nonsense, the kind of stuff you would want to hear on a sleek FM signal. AM strange tingles at night and rock music by day seem to benefit from a touch of static, although the notion that the broadcasts originate from far away. Oh, by the way, most popular AM show right now, Coast to Coast AM, runs overnights all over the world, right? They never got a long story on here, but they just said that we're going to now see the fact that AM radio is going away and more car makers are going to drop it, which sucks, but that's where they are now. They don't want to do it and they don't want to deal with it. Oh well. One of the things I want to bring up before we wrap things up is the legal challenges for companies in media and entertainment. JD Super put the story out here, and they put some very interesting facts in at this point. So, generative AI. By the way, I talked about the Adobe Podcasts Enhance feature, which is fantastic. The one thing they're talking about with AI is how the use of the tool will impact ownership of work, whether it jeopardizes rights or control of the work. The U.S. Copyright Office is reevaluating The U.S. Copyright Office is reevaluating a decision to grant copyright registration to a comic book with text-to-image AI-generated graphics. They bring up the metaverse. They bring up rapid publicity in digital spaces, IP enforcement, brand protection in new spaces, deepfakes entering mainstream entertainment, and then other legal era challenges, TikTok, short-form videos, the next hit song being picked up by AI. All these things are being considered. That's what they're talking about. Whatever reason, my voice is kind of getting bad, and it's about 30 minutes. I'm going to go wrap up the show. It's late. that's what we got tonight. Not a lot going on, but, I appreciate you listening in, as you always do. And in the meantime, come back next week for another Broadcasters Podcast. Remember, content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.